Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today.
Hello. My first guests of 2022 are pioneers of theatre. Over the past 46 years, they have supported the experimental, the unusual, the entertaining, the provocative. They've also supported emerging British companies, of which Told by an Idiot were one some time ago. And I think it's fair to say that they have, in some ways, many ways, changed the face of British theatre. The directors of the London International Mime Festival, Helen Lanigan and Joseph Seelig. Welcome. Off to a flying start. Get your name right. Welcome both. Now, I think I've got Helen coming in from Brighton, and Joseph, you're in Willesden Green, I believe.
Willesden Green, yes. No need to tell everybody that.
Sorry. I've got. I'll do that again. I've got Joseph coming in from Monte Carlo.
That's it. No, look, we've been up and coming here since about 1850, and we're nearly there.
Well, I think it's true. I think that I can't think, actually, I was thinking about this, and maybe there are some examples that someone will tweet us about, but I can't think of many other partnerships in theatre that have not only had the longevity that you have, but have continued to kind of keep developing rather than just rehashing the same old thing. So I'm going to take you both back a while ago to your first theatre experience, what you first saw on a stage and what you recall of it. Helen, what was your first theatre going experience?
Oh, crikey. I remember coming. So I had this strange upbringing. I grew up in a children's home, which my parents ran, but we used to go to be taken to see theatre things. So I remember going as a group outing to I'm not sure, I think maybe the Hippodrome, Brighton, to see a pantomime in which there was an extremely scary green rat. And every time the green rat character came on, there was a green spotlight and I had to hide behind the seat. So that was my first experience.
Joseph, what about your first experience?
Well, look, before my first experience, I wanted to just thank you very much indeed for your extremely generous introduction. Yes, I too grew up in a children's home, but there were only two of us, my sister and I. It was tough. My parents ran that one too. And I'm not sure if it was my first theatre experience, but the first theatre experience I had that I actually remember was at the Birmingham Rep, because as you know, I come from Birmingham. I was going to say I'm proud of it. It's just an accident of birth, isn't it? But anyway, it's a very nice place. And it was Henry V, and Henry V was played by Albert Finney.
Wow.
Yes, indeed, Albert Finney. And I don't know why, but my mother and I, for 'twas she who took me, was sitting in the front row, and Albert, or Hal, as he was known in the play, he kind of came off stage and ran across not ran across, but ran in front of the front row. And I had my legs sticking out, but thank God I wasn't very old. My legs weren't very long, but had they been any longer, he would have gone flying, sprawling over them. But it was the most exciting, wonderful thing, and I'll never forget it, even though I can't remember it very well.
Well, it's interesting because as a fellow Brummie, as you know, I think one of my earliest would have been at the Birmingham Hippodrome, where this ties into you, Helen.
Yeah.
When I was taken to see Danny LaRue in a pantomime, and I'd never seen anything quite like it. This kind of outrageous persona, much of which I didn't understand, but my dad found very amusing. And I think that kind of early exposure to variety has kind of remained with me in many ways in our work. But if that's what your first experience of theatre was, how did you both get into showbiz? Joseph, how did you get started?
Well, I was just thinking what you were saying about variety. I also remember, actually, I was very little because I went with, I think she was the au pair girl. I don't know why we I mean, why did we have an au pair girl when I was 11? I don't know. But anyway, we went to it's long gone, the Windsor Theatre Bearwood to see, it was a variety bill. I remember Nancy Whiskey with Chas McDevitt and somebody else and the Vipers. Anyway, how did I get into I was keen. I was a keen amateur thespian. There was this great place in Birmingham called the Midlands Arts Centre, which had only recently opened. This was in the sort of early-ish 1960s, and I joined it, and I was in several plays there, and I thought I was pretty good. The second play I was in fact, I had my doubts about how good I was in that. It was directed by none other than Mike Leigh. I think it was his first ever.
Wow.
Yes, it was his first ever job. And in his, I mean, this is a bit conceited now, but you know how it is. When people write their autobiographies, you rush off to the bookshop to see if you're in the index. And if you are, you buy it. On Amazon, and if you're not, you don't. And Mike Leigh has directed only about 5 plays, I think, or 6 plays that he didn't write or devise. And this was Endgame by Samuel Beckett, which he didn't devise or write. So he actually mentions me by name in his thank you very much indeed, Mike Leigh. Anyway, that was great.
Who did you play, Joseph?
I played Ham, or was it Clov? I don't know. It was one or other. It's the bloke in the wheel.
Was he in the chair?
In the wheelchair? Yeah.
In the chair, yes. Yes.
I still don't really understand what it was all about, but that's not Mike Leigh's fault. That was mine. Anyway, as I said, I thought I was quite talented.
So it was acting that you initially pursued.
Absolutely. And indeed, when I left school, I went to the local drama school, and I still thought I was pretty good. And I did quite a bit of work when I left, but mostly it was radio work. And I remember, well, the first piece of theatre that I was involved in after drama school was a production of The Bells, which was directed by the late Marius Goring. And I was late for the first rehearsal. This was in Leeds. I was late for the first rehearsal. And he told me to go away and not come back until I got a watch, because I didn't have a watch. And I bought a watch. I bought a watch for £3.10 from the first place I came to was actually a pawn shop. And it's a very beautiful watch, and I've still got it, and I'm very grateful to him for being the reason that I have this watch, although I'm not particularly grateful to him for the production of The Bells, which was a memorable failure. But
I'm going to imagine that production of The Bells, if that's all right, Joseph. And I'm going to come to you, Helen. What was your first entree into theatre?
My first entree, I was in the Lewis Youth Theatre, which is where I went to secondary school. And from there I applied. The big thing was to get into the National Youth Theatre. That was the big hope. And I did indeed get into the National Youth Theatre as a stage manager. I did act at school as well, but always felt a bit happier behind the scenes rather than on the stage. And from the National Youth Theatre, I then spent a few misspent years in the book trade in London, but really my first love was theatre. So I did a degree, as you do, in history of the Far East and at SOAS. So that was slightly strange. But while I was there, my then boyfriend was doing mime classes, and he was in the same class with a chap called John Moat. And we said, God, this guy is really good. We'd really love to get his London premiere going. So we looked for a theatre, and we found the Place Theatre, which was at that stage a private theatre. And I used my university grant check to hire the Place Theatre to put on John's premiere. And the main thing that we wanted was to be in the Mime Festival. This was about 1979, 1980. We wanted to be in the Mime Festival, and we wanted to impress certain Joseph Seelig. And so the Place Theatre, I think had about 200 seats at the time. So we sold out. There was a queue around the block. This is long before social media and all that kind of networking. This, John was the most incredible original sort of networker. So we turned people away. Joseph came and was amazed and booked us for the Mime Festival. And I got my grant back. So all was well.
Wow.
Yes.
So that preempts my next question. So that is when you first met, when you invited Joseph to the show?
Well, I think I invited him. I already kind of knew him because I knew him from afar. He was a cigar smoking figure who used to prop up the bar in the Cockpit Theatre's bar, because I was a fan of the Mime Festival. But of course, one didn't speak to the great Joseph Seelig. He was sort of, someone that we were all slightly nervous of. And yes, in later years, of course,
nobody speaks to me now, but that's for other reasons.
Yes,
well, Joseph, what's your memory of that first meeting with Helen?
Well, I was very impressed. What I remember first about Helen was that she had what were they called? A mullet or something?
Well, I think
style of hair.
I think he called me Raccoon Head.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, but look, the point is, I turned up, didn't I?
You did.
Turned up.
You did.
And I saw this old relic, John. Well, he wasn't then. John Mowat, and he was very good. He was very good, and yes, and well, I was impressed, as I have been, 38 years later, or however long it is.
Well, we'll come more to your relationship, obviously, because you are a double act. But I can really relate to what you just said, Helen, because I remember before Told by an Idiot started, so 7 years ago, Hayley and I and some pals trying desperately to get into the Mime Festival and making a kind of clown. I wouldn't call it a show. There was only about 10 minutes of it, a clown sketch about Salvador Dali and Garcia Lorca. And I think I must have written a handwritten letter to Joseph, inviting him to Trent Park, one of the studios that we'd managed to borrow from our old university. And to our utter amazement, you turned up. Now, obviously, you turned us down and we weren't in the festival. But I still think the big thing was you actually turned up. So,
well, look, two things there. First of all, I'm delighted that it wasn't, the Mime Festival wasn't something anybody could just walk into. So that's good. And secondly, yes, I always tried to go to see things if I possibly could. I'm sure I was deeply impressed, Paul. And, you got this all wrong. Maybe it's a clerical error.
Maybe I think I maybe misunderstood, Joseph. Yes. I'm sure it's a
yes. The words over my dead body. So
yes,
I think many different meanings.
And that letter from your solicitor, I'm sure, was just a misunderstanding.
Absolutely, I certainly never paid his bill. Yes.
Now, you two, when did you properly start working together then on the festival?
Well, Helen's story is that I started this festival I started the festival. It was called the Cockpit Festival of Mime and Visual Theatre. In the first year was 1977, and I was working at the time at the said Cockpit Theatre, and I was doing it all on my own. Everything. I mean, listen, life was simpler then, but I did everything on my own. But I was getting very, very tired of it. And I think I was, so Helen tells me, I was about to throw it up or throw it in. Sorry, not
throw it up. No.
throw in the towel. And I must have mentioned this to somebody called David Glass, who you probably know. And he said to me, "Oh, you ought to go and see Helen Lanigan. She's talented. She's good. She's this, that, and the other." Well, he didn't say she's this, that, and the other. He said she's talented and very good. And we had a meeting, and I knew Helen already, didn't I? Because Helen had set up something called Mime Action Group.
Yes, of course.
Yes. Mime Action Group was set up entirely to make my life miserable.
Sorry, Joe.
Because we brought our festival, brought in work from overseas as well as from England, but Helen was very concerned that we didn't have enough British work. And she was in fact making my life quite miserable, really, lobbying for all this. And was it, I think it's Lyndon Johnson who went on about better to have somebody inside the tent pissing out than inside, outside pissing in. And it seemed to me that, I could make my life a lot easier by not having Helen sort of, attacking me all the time with this mime action group. And also because she seemed to me to be an extremely competent and capable and, pleasant person that I got on with. So I asked her if she would help me with the festival, and she agreed that she would. She asked an awful lot of money, I have to say.
I beg your pardon.
Well, I know.
Beg your pardon.
Well, no. Given what I myself was earning, it seemed to me outrageous. But anyway,
sorry, I'll just get my violin. Hang on a sec.
Yeah. it was worth it then, and it has been worth it ever since.
Joseph, we don't dwell on matters of commerce on this platform, I assure
you.
Oh,
excellent.
It's all about the art. Helen, so that first festival, how was it for you? It must have been quite an exciting thing, wasn't it, to be part of running and organising this?
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, it was 1986 was that when Joe asked me to come and start working with him. And so, yes, sort of see how it was all done from the inside. This was all very exciting, working on the international front. And of course, Joseph, he was running this rather glamorous outfit because he was also an artist manager. He ran an artist management company. So there were all sorts of exciting things going on. They had things like a telex machine, whoever remembers them.
Wow.
And yes, very exciting stuff. So to work on the international front as well as the British stuff, suddenly it all takes on a rather different balance. And getting to travel, I love to travel, so suddenly making these visits to see things, to try and find new work for the festival, it was great, very exciting.
On the subject of the festival, now,
yes,
you don't need to name any names or any individuals or companies, but I wonder if either of you have ever regretted booking anything for the festival. and
how long have you got?
If it's one of my shows, we can end the podcast here, I can assure you.
no, not yours.
I think, Helen, after you. All right. No, in fact, I think it was in that very first year, wasn't it? No, we went to see, I think, did we go to even America or somewhere?
Don't. There were ironing boards involved.
Yes. All right. I went.
Yes. We can't name names, but that was
no.
When you said your first festival and how did you feel about it? That was the show that sprang to my mind, and I thought I can't say that. I can't say that.
Okay. Well,
you can gloss over that.
We'll gloss over that. Yeah.
But the wonderful thing is, you've conjured up something brilliant with the phrase ironing boards were involved. So
Yes.
Now,
if only it was that. But honestly, out of several hundred shows over the years,
nearly 800.
There've been.
Is it?
How many?
Nearly 800.
Wow.
Good God, because there are about half a dozen that I think we would regret having booked, but there's a very good reason in each case why we did book them.
Yeah.
But that's about it for the rest.
That is a very satisfying kind of strike rate, isn't it? To reflect on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You've also, over the years, you've seen, as I mentioned in the introduction, a lot of emerging young British artists and companies. Is there anybody or any company in the last couple of years, or this festival coming up, British, that you would recommend or that you see having a kind of longevity or future?
Helen?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the Pappy Show, Kane Husbands, the Pappy Show, I think they're absolutely ones to watch. They've been going just a few years now, but they really have got momentum now. And I think, considering where, we are now, particularly with Let's Create and the new 10-year strategy for the Arts Council, I think that they are right on the money, in terms of what the sort of work that they're doing, the artists that they're working with. So I think that they're terrific. Barely Methodical Troupe, obviously, they've been around a little bit, but, I think that they're still ones to watch, and they are working on larger scale stages now. So, yeah, I think they're good. Joe?
Well, I agree with all that, but we also have great hopes for a very interesting young man from Scotland.
Sadiq Ali.
Yeah. Sadiq Ali. Helen.
That's why it's always good to have a double act. So tell me about Sadiq Ali.
So Sadiq, his speciality is Chinese pole, but he comes from a queer aesthetic using Chinese pole, and really talking about a very difficult subject matter, which is being a gay Muslim man. It's really hard. But so this is one of the shows where, circus arts, physical theatre is being used to tackle quite serious topics, because I think there was a moment many years ago where, if you looked through the festival programme, it did seem to be a lot of clown. And I think as years have gone by, I think, it's become apparent that, this is absolutely a medium that can tackle serious topics. And that's evidenced by quite a lot of the shows in the festival this year.
And also, that sounds amazing. Where's he playing? Where's his show?
His show is going to be at Jackson's Lane, and it's actually the very last weekend of the festival, so the 4th, 5th and 6th of February.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, two things, many things, but two things are in my mind when I think about your festival, is I think what people maybe don't appreciate, who are slightly younger, is that your festival, for a lot of my generation, was the only opportunity to see international work. It was before the Barbican were bringing over a lot of international stuff. So it was a chance for people to see stuff they'd never heard of, or unless you were touring abroad and you met them on the international touring circuit. And I wonder as well whether things also go in trends or fashions. Like you say, Helen, you sometimes have a lot of clown emerging, and then maybe that shifts as the world shifts a bit as well. And we see slightly different forms emerging. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I think that's right. I think certainly circus theatre has been a sort of growing part of our festival. And, each festival, we try to make sure that there's a sort of a balance between things that are sort of animation or puppetry, visual theatre, mime, a bit of mask. We try to work across those kind of disciplines within, under the umbrella, and try to make sure that there's not too much of any one particular discipline. Yeah. But certainly the circus theatre artists, particularly the ones who come from France, really have, wonderful skills, stories, direction, production values. It's tremendous. Yeah.
And I was thinking, if you were both to be sitting on your desert island and you could take one show that you have programmed across the years to watch repeatedly on your desert island, what it would be. For me, it would probably be the Right Size show Moose, which is still one of the most entertaining evenings I've had with other people in the same room watching a group of other people. So is there one, if you could only take one, what would it be? Joseph?
Oh gosh. Okay, I'll say A Minute Too Late by Complicité, or Théâtre de Complicité as it was then. But really, that's the first one that came to mind.
No, that's a great choice. No, and when did you have it in the festival?
It was, I don't know, in the mid 80s. I mean, literally in the year it was invented. And what's so extraordinary about that show is, it was so funny. It was so touching, tender, but funny. I laughed myself silly, and I didn't realize until sometime later, which just goes to show how sensitive and intelligent I am, that it was actually, poor Simon McBurney was commemorating his father who had died in this. So anyway, but that was a brilliant show. But I think, I can't remember, you can have 8 records on your desert island.
Yes.
So there are at least another 7, I would add
Yes.
to that. But yeah, it was something simply wonderful, and I thought that it epitomized what I would like to think the festival was, which was something which highlighted British talent and international talent all in one. And if I could just go back to something you were saying earlier when you were asking Helen about that. Yes, when we started, it wasn't one of the few festivals, or the festival was one of the few opportunities where you could see international work. Really, when it's, okay, 40 something years ago, it's not hundreds of years ago. It's amazing how little non-British work you could see in the theatre.
Yeah, it's true.
And now, yes, lots of brave theatres in London bring things from abroad, not so much in the regions, but actually nobody really seems to be bringing what we put together at all. I'm not quite sure why, but I think that's why the festival has survived or flourished as long as it has.
I totally agree. I think you're absolutely spot on. Helen, your show to take to your desert island?
My show, well, it's going to have to be Thomas Kubenek. His solo show, which I think he's just a genius. He's just such a funny man. The material is so funny, him and his, even though Rolf Harris got there before, the extra leg, that gag, and flying around the stage and telling these little stories. I just think he's magical, and who's not going to take a clown when you?
No, I also think
you've got to take the clown.
Absolutely, and I think one thing again that the festival celebrates, I always feel, which maybe isn't always celebrated in more conventional British theatre, it celebrates the role of the performer. And we have a lot of work in Britain, nothing wrong with this, but celebrates the director or the writer. Whereas I think the festival still very much places the performer front and center. And obviously for me and Hayley and John, that was always what, and remains what we're about as well, is the notion of the performer. So I certainly thank you for supporting that over the years. And it sounds weird because performers are on stage, but weirdly they can get slightly sidelined sometimes. Don't get Hayley Carmichael started on that. She's very, very passionate about that. She's the only person who refuses to come on the podcast as well. It's quite good.
Really?
we haven't fallen out, by the way, but it's quite. I might do a version of the podcast where I interview Hayley again, a bit like I did with you, but I play Hayley as well. So watch this space. It's been really lovely chatting, guys. I've got 8 questions left, and they are quick fire questions addressed to each of you individually. And I want you to say the first response to this question. Joseph, you're up first. Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday or Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush?
Monsieur Hulot.
Helen, juggling or puppetry?
Puppetry.
Joseph, Cadaqués or Biarritz?
Cadaqués, no contest.
Helen, Edith Piaf or Jacques Brel?
Edith Piaf.
Joseph, mushy peas or black pudding?
Can I say neither? And I've never been to Biarritz either.
Helen, Berlin or Barcelona?
Barcelona.
Joseph, Evelyn Waugh or PG Woodhouse?
PG Woodhouse.
Helen, Delicatessen or Life is Beautiful?
Life is Beautiful.
Joseph, Helen, I will see you very soon at some of these brilliant events that you've planned. It's always great having a laugh, and hopefully we can do that together in person very soon. But thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care. All the
Bye.
best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please spread the word